Clockwork, or All Wound Up, by Phillip Pullman. Meanwhile, Gretel was struggling through the snow towards the house where Fritz lodged. She could see from the end of the street that all the windows were dark, except one in the attic where Fritz often used to work throughout the night. She had to knock half a dozen times before the landlady came grumbling to open the door.
"Who is it? What do you want at this time of night?" "Oh, it's you, child. What in the world are you after?"
"I've got to speak to Herr Fritz. It's very important."
Mumbling and frowning, the old lady stepped aside and said,
"Yes, I heard all about that business at the inn, making up wicked stories, frightening people. I'll be glad when he's gone. In fact, I've got half a mind to give him notice. Go on up, child, top of the stairs and keep going. No, you can't have a candle. This is the only one I've got, and I need it myself. You've got sharp eyes. Make do."
So Gretel climbed the 4 staircases to the top of the house, each one darker and narrower than the one below, and came at last to a tiny landing where a line of light glowed beneath a door. There she knocked, and a nervous voice answered,
"Who is it? What do you want?"
"It's Gretel, Herr Fritz, from the inn. I've got to speak to you."
"Come in then, as long as you're by yourself."
Gretel opened the door. She found Fritz standing in the light of a smoky lamp, throwing paper after paper into a leather bag, which was bulging with his clothes and books and other bits and pieces. A glass of plum brandy stood on the table beside him. He had already drunk quite a lot by the look of him, for his eyes were wild, his cheeks were flushed, and his hair was standing on end. "What is it?" he said. "What do you want?"
"That story you told us,"
Gretel began, but she got no further, for the young man put his hands over his ears and shook his head violently.
"Don't speak of it. I wish I had never begun it. I wish I'd never told a story in my life. But you've got to listen to me," she said. "Something dreadful's going to happen, and I don't know what it is because you didn't finish writing the story."
"How do you know I didn't finish it?"
he said. She showed him the sheet of paper she'd found. He groaned and put his face in his hands.
"Groaning won't help," she said. "You've got to finish the story properly. What happens next?" "I don't know," he cried. "I dreamed the first part of it, and it was so strange and horrible that I couldn't resist writing it down and pretending it was mine, but I couldn't think of any more." "But what were you going to do when you got to that part?" she said.
"Make it up, of course," he said. "I've done that before. I often do it. I enjoy the risk, you see. I start telling a story with no idea what's going to happen at the end, and I make it up when I get there. Sometimes it's even better than writing it down first. I was sure I could do it with this one, but when the door opened and the old man came in, I must have panicked. Oh, I wish I'd never begun. I'll never tell a story again."
"You must tell the end of this one, though," said Gretel, "or something bad will happen. You've got to."
"I can't."
"You must."
"I couldn't."
"You have to."
"Impossible," he said. "I can't control it any more. I wound it up and set it going, and it'll just have to work itself out. I wash my hands of it. I'm off."
"But you can't. Where are you going?"
"Anywhere. Berlin, Vienna, Prague, as far away as I can get."
And he poured himself another glass of plum brandy and swallowed it all in one go. This is Fritz. Useless, you see? Quite irresponsible. But then Fritz was only playing at being a storyteller. If he was a proper craftsman, like a clockwork maker, he'd have known that all actions have their consequences. For every tick there is a tock. For every once upon a time there must be a story to follow. Because if a story doesn't, something else will, and it might not be as harmless as a story. So Gretel sighed and turned to leave. At the same time as she was feeling her way down the dark stairs in Fritz's lodging-house, Karl was going back into the inn. He had taken little Florian up to the clock tower and fastened him to the frame, ignoring the prince's helpless struggles and his musical requests for mercy. When morning came, there he would be, Karl's masterpiece, on show as everyone expected,
and Carl would receive everyone's congratulations and his certificate of competence from Herr Ringelmann, and he'd be entered in the role of master clockwork makers, and then he could leave the town and make his way with Sir Iron Soul into the wide world where power and fortune awaited him.